Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I am an idiot and didn't realize that today actually is the day that the NA main event is kicking off, and the EMEA main event I suppose as well, but I thought it kicked off tomorrow. Turns out it starts today for whatever reason, and actually like a lot of games are happening today for whatever reason. I don't know why. I don't understand this format, honestly. I think it's kind of bad, if I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not a huge fan of some of it, but it is what it is. We're going to go and we're going to talk about the games that are going to be happening and going on, some of them today. And so I'm going to give you my thoughts before they kick off here in a few hours. So if it's already passed and you missed it, this video, I'm sorry. But let's jump in and let's talk about the NA main event. Let's start by looking at the bracket. You can see here the blank bracket. I'll show you my filled-in bracket in a little bit, but round one, you have Toronto Defiant versus LFO. Banger of a game there. Timeless versus Pirates in Pajamas. Luminosity Gaming versus Shikigami Hikari. And Students of the Game versus M80 as the final game in that opening round. Another pretty good, solid banger of a match. So, with that in mind, those are your 8 teams. Those are your round one games. Let's throw up my predictions for the bracket. No surprise, really. You can see I have Toronto Defiant winning the whole thing over M80 for my grand finals. But how do we get there? Let's talk a bit about it. Let's start with that round one game between Toronto Defiant and LFO. I tend to think that that is probably the best game here in the opening round. I think Toronto Defiant have I actually think they have a pretty tough road in their path to victory if they are to win the whole thing, if they don't drop any games, and if my bracket were to come true. I think they have a pretty tough road, because they'd open up round one against an LFO team that I feel very, very strongly about. I think they're a very good team. I think their problem ultimately is the fact that they haven't had some of the same time to synergize that a team like the Defiant has. Yes, Defiant is not a team that has existed fully for a long time, but 3 of the pieces were on that Mayhem roster that won the Overwatch League last year, right? You have RuPaul, you have Someone, you have Merit. Those 3 are phenomenal players. They all played together last year. So yes, you have to, add Sugar Free and Vega into this roster, but this is an incredibly talented roster with a lot of really good players. Malgameta's gone, most likely, with the new patch, so I think this is a team that will be very, very good. LFO, yes, they have a ton of really good players. I love Seeker. I think Seeker's a phenomenal player on this team. I don't love Mir as their solo tank. That is one of the things that I do think will potentially hold him back. But in a Doomfist meta, I think he should be fine in that regard. The rest of the roster is pretty solid as well. But I do think the Defiant should be favored to win that game. And they would then match up against the winner of Timeless versus Pirates in Pajamas, which, if the Defiant do go, have a tough, 5-map game, let's say, against LFO. Maybe it's not. Maybe LFO is just unable to keep up with them. But if it's a tough 4 or 5-map series against LFO, and then a couple hours later, they have to go up against a Timeless team that I do think will pretty easily dispatch Pirates in Pajamas, that is once again a pretty tough ask for them. I really rate Timeless quite high. I think Rocket and Chopper are phenomenal. I think this team looked incredible. Obviously, they upset M80, which was a pretty big deal when it happened. So I think this is a very good team with some really good players on it. You have a couple of Overwatch League veterans with Sonjun and Opener as well. CJ, another guy who played in the Overwatch League. I think their tank line of Riker and Icy is a real big question mark. I did not get the chance to really watch this game closely. So you do have Riker with Icy, who's been around for a long time, but he is the other tank on this team. So I don't think they're necessarily as good as the Defiant are, but they've been around for a long time. They're a very solid core, and so they have really good team play and good cohesion, and that does help quite a lot with a roster like this. I think ultimately the Defiant will win it. I think they are the better team, but I think that is an interesting kind of matchup to look out for, as there are some very good players on both sides of this matchup. On the other side of the bracket now, Luminosity opens up round one against Shikigami Hikari. I will say I did originally make this bracket before the Malga changes were reverted. which I do think does help Luminosity a lot if we do move into a more Doomfist meta. It's not a guarantee. I don't know what to expect. Obviously, it's a very short turnaround time between the patch and these games, so we could see that Malga is still good enough. I did play a little bit of Overwatch since the change reverted, and Malga's still, I think, okay. I mean, I'm not very good at the game, so at low rank, when people don't know how to deal with Malga, he's still somewhat strong and definitely better than I think he was before. He's better than he was at the start of Season 9, but he's worse than he was when they made the mid-season patch. But Luminosity, to me, should be pretty easily able to beat Shikigami Hikari. I think they're the weakest team of these 8. I really just don't think they're that strong. So to me, Luminosity, especially if they can play Dante Doomfist, should be very, very good in this matchup. I think they should be able to take that win with pretty easily. And then that sets up a game between M80 and Luminosity, in my opinion. I think Students of the Game, I think, are a good team. I think they have some very good players. Obviously, love seeing Rack Attack on a successful team finally. Their DPS duo, their primary DPS duo of PGE and Scissors are phenomenal. And I think Infected is a very good main tank. So I actually think that I've underrated this team quite a bit. I actually think this region in particular, there are 6 teams that are very, very good and could easily make the top 4 or the top 3 even potentially. And I think that this is a team that has a lot of really good young talent. And I think as time goes on and they start to get into the point where they're playing against some really high-level teams, and as they kind of begin to develop their play a lot more, I think we could see the Students of the Game roster really compete at a high level. But I think M80 right now has the advantage. I think they just have the high-end talent that I don't think we've fully seen the fullest of potential from Students of the Game. But M80, you have players like Pelican and Spectra and Hawk and UV, right? Like, these are really, really good players on a very good team. Yes, they lost to Timeless, but I think they lost to Timeless because Timeless has the coordination and skill. That M80 has not fully developed that coordination yet. And it was still a 5-map, banger of a series. So I think M80 should win this one. I do like Students of the Game. I think there's definitely room for them to make some swings in this tournament. But I do think M80 will ultimately be the team that wins that one. And then in a matchup against Luminosity, I think would be a very interesting one. How does M80 do in this matchup? I think Hawk is actually a very good Doomfist, so this could actually be in a Doomfist mirror, which I would not be shocked, even if Malga is good, if these teams played in the Malga mirror, because I think both Hawk and Dante like Malga. I think they're both very good on Malga. They are on Doomfist. They might be the two best Doomfists in this region. Outside of, someone's also still very good on Doomfist. But I do really think that these are 2 very good Doomfist teams. I think an M80 versus Luminosity rematch, I think, would go the distance. I think these 2 teams are both phenomenal Doomfist teams. I do rate M80 slightly higher than Luminosity, and I think in that sense, they would win this matchup. I think that they're just a little bit better on the DPS side in particular. I really like Luminosity's team. I'm a huge fan of King. I've been singing King's praises for a while. I liked him in the Overwatch League. I thought he was kind of unjustly pushed aside, but I do like very much what he has put together as a player. I think Vision's pretty good, but I do think M80 is just a little bit higher and a little bit better on that high end. Right? Ultraviolet, I think, is better as a player than Luke Mino. It's close, but I think he's better. And then you have, obviously, Squid and Juby on Luminosity versus Lep and Renko. Close again, but I give the edge to Lep and Renko. Just a little bit more. Just a slight bit more. To me, like, Lep and Juby are similar. They're kind of Lucio players, are known for being, kind of Lucio players. I don't think Lep is the main guy. I think Renko is the one who played the majority of the games, if I remember correctly. I think they're playing some double flex, but they obviously have Lep to also play the Lucio, which is currently huge, and that's also kind of where it'll be. So I think it's a good matchup, and these are 2 teams that are very, very evenly matched. I actually think this is probably another 5-map series, but I do give the edge to M80. I think DPS really is where they separate. Spectra, Pelican, Hydron. I mean, that's a phenomenal DPS trio that I just think Vision and King won't really be able to keep up with. But I think it's a good series no matter what. That would set up a Toronto Defiant versus M80 upper bracket final. I think the Defiant win that one. They won when they played in the Swiss stage. Obviously, it's a little different since the Swiss stage. The team had kind of just come together somewhat at that point in time. But we've seen M80 struggle a little bit more. The Defiant have been so dominant. The Defiant are really, really good. As much as I think that there are 6 teams that are competitive in this group, I think that there is a very clear-cut number one. I think the Defiant are head and shoulders above everybody else in this group. That's why I think it's no real shocker that I have them winning this bracket, because I think they're just that much better than the other teams here in North America. But I like what they have done as a region. I think there's some really, really, really good teams. But to me, the Defiant are just right now the best team in the region. But let's talk about the lower bracket for a little bit to explain how I think M80 gets there. And because I want to talk about LFO for a little bit, because obviously LFO got the unlucky misfortune of having to play Toronto Defiant in round 1 of the upper bracket. I think LFO is a very good team. Now, I think they have some weaknesses. I don't love Mirror as their solo tank. I would like to see them add another tank player at some point later on. Maybe they steal a tank player from another team. Assuming they get an org, they could probably afford to grab an extra tank. Maybe they steal somebody like Infected from Students of the Game, or they steal somebody from Luminosity, which I would be a little more shocked by, if I'm honest with you. But there's some tanks out there. I'm sure they could find a team where they're like, hey, we actually like this tank, or maybe one of the teams that didn't qualify that is a pretty solid tank, right? Like, that's the kind of thing that I could see potentially happening. But for right now, they do have Mirror as their solo tank. He's going to be the main guy they roll with for now. And I like what they have. I think if they can go to Doomfist, or even if it's Malga, I think that fits Mirror a little bit more. He's historically DPS player. So I don't think Pip is all that exciting of a team, and they're okay. Magic 8-Ball, Chronic. I actually was very impressed by Chronic during their matches. I thought he looked very, very good, and I thought Magic 8-Ball played very well as well. But I do like LFO more. I think they win that one. I think Students of the Game gets lucky getting to play against Shikigami Hikari. I think that is a good matchup for them. I think they walk away from that one victorious. I don't want to talk about it much. I'm sorry, Shikigami Hikari. I just think you're the weakest looking team right now. Not a lot of well-known pieces, not a lot of really big-name players on that team. They have some players who represent, Mexico, which is an underrepresented region, of course, and an underrepresented country right now. And they have some Canadian players, but I think generally speaking, this team just looks and I think they're probably going to be the weakest looking team here in North America. A Luminosity LFO game, I think, is a 5-mapper. I also think Timeless Students of the Game could go to 5. I really think the top 6 in North America is very, very good. I think you have to give Timeless and LFO the edge. I think they just have a little bit more built out. Now, Luminosity has more synergy than LFO does. LFO, I think, has a bit more high-end talent, and it'll be interesting to see. LFO has had to play 2 weeks worth of games because they lost to Citrus Nation, obviously, in their opening game in the group stage. So they had to then come back and play games again. They had to play Citrus Nation again. They looked much better the second time they played them. Now they have another week of games. They've done 2 metas now. They've had to adapt a little bit more. I think that skill set of having to play multiple metas has hardened them a little more. And I think they should be looking stronger now as they go up against an LG team that I do also rate very highly. Largely has been together for a while. So I think this will be a good matchup as well if we do get it. I do favor LFO slightly in this one, but I think it's a very good matchup. Timeless Students of the Game, same kind of thing. Timeless has a little bit more synergy. They have a little bit... I think the talent is pretty similar, but I think Timeless edges them out in terms of just the time spent together as a team, formerly on Wisp, now on Timeless, and then I think that will be the real key to kind of see where that goes. But I think that synergy will ultimately be the thing that puts them over Students of the Game. But I could see it being a phenomenal game. And it's the reason why I think North America looks to be the slightly better region than EMEA. I talked yesterday with EMEA, and I was like, oh, it looks better. And then I immediately went, no, I actually think North America is probably better. Because I think once you get to the top 6 in North America, it's very, very competitive. Whereas I think in EMEA, it's really only the top 4 top 5. But what that means is you're going to have a couple of stinkers, especially because just the way the bracket unfolds in EMEA, you have a team like Ex-Oblivione that just gets kind of screwed because they have one easy game and they have 2 tough games, basically, assuming the bracket unfolds the way we expect it to. And so you really only kind of get like EXO versus Rock, which is a good game, and then whoever EXO would play in the loser's game between, I want to say it's SSG and, I did this yesterday, I can check, SSG and Bubo, who, hey, by the time this video comes out, they might have an org. But I digress. I'm getting lost. LFO versus Timeless would then be the game. Again, I think it's a phenomenal game. I really think this bottom bracket is just banger after banger. I think any team, really, of LFO, LG, Timeless students of the game, realistically, could make it all the way, and M80, could make it all the way to play against the Defiant. I just really want to see some of these teams play. That's really my thing. I'm so excited for these lower bracket games, because when you get potentially games like LFO, LG, Timeless students of the game, LFO, Timeless, Timeless, LG, students of the game, LG, M80 LFO, M80 Timeless rematch, M80, students of the game. There's so many great potential matchups here that I'm very excited to see how it goes. But ultimately in the lower bracket, right, like I feel right now the most confident in M80 as a team. I think it's very close. I think there's reason to think any of those teams could make it and could run all the way through the lower bracket and be the team that plays against the Defiant, who I do think should make the grand finals. I think they look like simply the best team in North America right now, quite clearly. They just seem like they have everything together, but I do think it could really be any of the other 5 that go up against them. Right now, I feel the best about M80, but I want to see what happens this weekend. I really want to see where these teams are. I want to see what it looks like. Obviously, it's one meta. It's hard to base things off of one meta. But I think that's the thing that makes North America so exciting, is to me it feels like in EMEA we kind of know who 1 and 2 are. We think it's Twisted Minds and Bubo Spray Check. Maybe we get surprised. Maybe SSG really looks a lot better in this tournament and makes a run. Maybe Rock Esports is really good and they're the number 2. But it feels like it should be Twisted Minds versus Bubo Spray Check. But in North America, I genuinely don't know. I think M80's number 2. But it could be LFO. It could be Timeless, right? Timeless beat M80 in a 5-mapper. So maybe they're better. Or maybe LG in this Doomfist meta is just really, really good. And maybe they look very good in this game. So I'm very excited to see where this goes. I'm really excited for the potential kind of matchups here. I think the lower bracket's going to be phenomenal. I think we're going to get some phenomenal games, both upper and lower. But I think the lower bracket and those elimination games, dog fights, are going to be phenomenal. But ultimately, I have Toronto Defiant winning, and I have M80 as the team they will be facing in that grand finals. So I'd love to hear from you, hear your thoughts on this NA bracket. Obviously, we'll see what happens later today. I'm going to miss some of those games, unfortunately, but I'm very excited to kind of see how it unfolds and see where these teams end up, because I'm very interested by everything we've got here. I think North America is looking to be a very strong tournament, and I'm really excited. So let me know, like I said, your thoughts on this in the comments down below. Do you agree with me that the Defiant should win? Do you have M80 as the second best team? LFO, Timeless, LG, students of the game, Pip, Shikigami? I mean, it could be anybody. It could literally be anybody. So let me know in the comments down below your thoughts. I would love to hear from you. But that is going to be all from me for today. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want more like it in the future, consider liking and subscribing. Your support does help out a lot with the channel. That's all, once again. So hope you're all staying safe and staying healthy. And until next time, bye-bye.